Hey nerds, it is Thor's Day, and today we are talking about the Marvel Studios What If Episode 7 on Disney Plus. And we've got some Marvel Cinematic News, teasers, speculation about what's to come for you, so don't miss out. This is the FOMO Show. Alright guys, so this is Dylan, and thanks for joining me tonight. Whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or whatever, please like, subscribe, and tag the little bell icon, and find the ding, so that you know when we drop new videos and when we go live and all that good stuff. So, excuse me. Don't forget to check out the website at www.broken.pictures.com. Okay, so a couple special notes. Just stay healthy out there and stay on top of your game, and be careful of, still pandemic and all that jazz. So, as you can see, Quinn is not here tonight. He has to work, so hey Quinn, hopefully you're watching. If anybody's watching right now. Anyways, I'm just speaking in a vacuum to myself, but I'm having fun. And so, let me go ahead and typically I don't do this because this is Quinn's job, but I'm going to go ahead and give you your official spoiler alert. If you have not seen episode 7 of What If, it's time to check out. So we'll see you next time. Pause this, go watch that, and then come back here and watch this, as Quinn would say. So, there you have it. Any spoilers from here on out are your own fault. Sorry about you. So, let me move on to MCU news. Things are heating up in the Black Widow lawsuit deal. Bob Chapek, the CEO, the new CEO of Disney, has had some major missteps. Obviously, if you don't know what's going on with the ScarJo thing, they signed a contract that Black Widow is only going to be released in theaters. However, Disney decided to alter the deal further, and so they released it on Disney Plus, as everyone knows. A lot of people watched it that way. But even though ScarJo's people had reached out on multiple occasions to the Disney people trying to get some kind of new financial arrangement, because not only was Scarlett Johansson the main character, the star of the movie, but she was also the executive producer. So there's a lot of money tied to that. Yeah. And she got a percentage. She's supposed to get a percentage of what came with the profits from being released in theater only. But Disney decided to, through Bob Chapek, released it on Disney Plus and did not update their agreement. So obviously, a lot of the money that ScarJo was supposed to get came through Disney Plus, and there was no agreement in place for Disney Plus. Therefore, she was out that money. That obviously took away from the profits that people would have gone to the theater and seen it. So she's in her full rights by demanding more money and all that kind of stuff, and reaching out on multiple occasions. And Bob Chapek had blown off her people completely, and now, and even gone as far as slandering her publicly, saying that she was money grabbing and all these different things, and just making it personal when it didn't really have to be that way. And this has got to be the probably one of the biggest scandals in at least recent history in the past decade about things like this, because they just don't happen anymore. People handle their business, and so this is kind of a big deal that Disney, one of the biggest companies, that it is just, not doing, the CEO is just not doing his job, not handling his job properly. So recently, even though he has publicly scandaled her and slandered her and all this kind of stuff, just recently at the shareholders announcement day or something like that, I can't remember exactly what it was. He basically kind of backtracked and said that they are going to have to look into the current state of their contracts with their talent moving forward. That basically acknowledging that they did not take into consideration any kind of release plan with Disney Plus, same day and date and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, ScarJo's getting that money. So he basically just acknowledged it publicly, and they're gonna have to settle out of court because they've already got enough bad juju on this already. So there's that. I know you don't want to get into all that. That's not why you came here. So let me just hit this MCU news quick. Supposedly, okay, so we know Venom, Let There Be Carnage, was pushed back and then moved back and moved around a little bit. And now it's on October 1st still, which is looking good. It's only running 90 minutes, which is, I mean, we hardly ever see movies that run an hour and a half anymore. Excuse me. Still got a little scratch in my throat from COVID 3 weeks ago. So yeah. All right, so the big news this week is that there is a huge after credits scene that is supposed to have big implications for the Sony Spider-Man universe going forward. And of course, Tom Hardy has gone on record, and Tom Holland has gone on record as wanting to see Spider-Man and Venom in the same movie. And of course, we know, Spider-Man No Way Home, they're messing with the Spider-Verse and all this kind of stuff, and they're pulling in villains from the previous Spider-Man movies that were controlled by Sony, which, I mean, it's a spectacular feat in itself just to see Disney and Sony still working together on this. It's unprecedented. And it's just a huge deal. So going forward, of course, Kevin Feige has said in the past that Spider-Man is unique in that he is one of the only heroes or the only hero that can jump universes. So, alluding to, obviously, we're going to eventually see Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, in the Sonyverse with Villain and Morbius and all these other ones that they're working up. Excuse me. So if you don't know how that deal works, of course, the way it works is we've got the Spider-Man titled movies, like the individual Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, and then Sony controls those, and then we get appearances by Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. And they get one each, right? So I mean, he was in Infinity War, he was in Endgame, he was in Civil War, and of course we got Spider-Man, No Way Home, and 2 Spider-Man movies, and then 3 appearances. So we may or may not see him. Well, it's pretty much given we're going to see him in Doctor Strange 2. So whatever deal they've got worked out. Sony controls the Spider-Man movies, and MCU, Kevin Feige produces them and has a big hand in those. So, anyways, we will most likely be seeing Tom Holland Spider-Man cross paths with Tom Hardy Venom, which is super exciting because, if you're a Spider-Man fan and you saw the first Venom movie, it was a pleasant surprise, even though it was, at first, it was kind of like, how do you do Venom without Spider-Man? But they figured it out. And now they're doing Carnage, and it's going to be hella good. The other announcement for MCU news is that Marvel Studios announced 4 new untitled movies to the MCU's lineup in 2024. That's in addition to the other 3 that were announced in 2023. So we've got 7 untitled movies, and those could be, excuse me, those could be sequels. But of course, going into the new phase, we don't really know what is coming necessarily. Of course, we know we're getting the Black Panther 2 and Fantastic Four and Blade and some of these down the line. Cap 4 with Sam Wilson, Deadpool 3, an X-Men movie at some point. They could be any of those. So, yeah, so just look out for those, and super excited about what is coming in the next couple years. So, it's going to be a big time for MCU fans. And so, let's move on. Excuse me. Let me get a drink. I am scratchy throat here. All right, so moving on to episode 7 of What If. What if Thor were an only child? So the episode description says, Thor, who never learned to be a good hero, throws an out-of-control intergalactic party on Earth. So as far as rating this episode, it was fun. No doubt, it was fun. There's some things that don't make sense as far as like where the MCU is and where it was at that point because this is happening obviously around the time of the first Thor movie, and some things just don't line up. But it's one of those things. It's kind of like some things you watch and you know that you're not there for the plot. You're just there to have fun. Fast and Furious for one. You just want to see some cars do some crazy fun things. So in this episode, it was kind of like that vibe to me. It was a lot of fun, but as far as like plot and stuff moving forward, I mean, there was obviously some things in there meant to go forward, but I didn't really take it that seriously. So I'm gonna give it a 7. Let's say 7 foam parties is what I'm going to give it. So, excuse me. All right. So in this episode, Thor obviously did not have. He's an only child. Okay, I'm assuming that means that there was no Hela as well. So. So, I mean, remember at the very, very beginning of this season, there was an inciting incident. There was a point, even especially episode 1, the Watcher or Watu was like right there. That's the point where the universe veered and things changed. But as things progress, as things go along, it's more and more unclear where that point of change is. Excuse me. and more just kind of like Twilight Zone meets MCU, where it's just like, what if this crazy thing, where they're not necessarily trying to establish how the multiverse works, and they're just trying to have fun with it, which I'm totally cool with. So I mean, the question with that is, if Thor is an only child, okay, there's no Hela, and there's no Loki. But, Loki wasn't technically his real brother to begin with. And that leads to another question, because later on in the episode, we see Loki as a full-on frost giant. And Loki was supposedly the runt, so he's not the runt either. I'm assuming that's why he was even smaller than Thor. And for a frost giant, that's tiny. Super tiny. So, is he not the runt anymore? Is it due to, like, Odin's magic or, a certain diet that he's eating while he's among them? So... I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of left open to speculation, and so we open up, and of course Jane and Darcy are sitting in the place like they were in Thor 1, and they're watching the readouts and the meter readings and all this different stuff in the van. And of course Darcy notices that it's beeping and it's going off, but this time the Bifrost shoots over them and goes to Vegas instead of the desert, because Thor is basically just waiting on Odin to go to sleep, and he's taking the same basic role as Loki did, where he just didn't really give a crap about Odin going into Odin sleep or all that kind of thing. Even so much so that that Hela, or Frigga, excuse me, Frigga didn't seem to care that much either. Where she was, I mean, she was obviously just waiting to go do her wine time with her ladies, so that she just kind of singing him to sleep, and whoop, there he is, let's go. And her outing, I guess, I mean, to be fair, I guess she was looking forward to it for 1,000 years. But she did warn Thor not to have any parties or anything like that. But Thor being Thor before Thor 1, he obviously did, and because he used to go around and stir up trouble. And reading the comics throughout, there are different versions of Thor, and there are versions of Thor that is still kind of like this. So that there's another question right there, because Heimdall is supposed to be watching Thor. And of course Heimdall didn't say anything this time because Idris Elba didn't come back to voice him, and rumors are that Idris Elba wanted out, because when he signed on to play Heimdall when Thor 1 came out, he wasn't that big a star, but of course now he's a huge star, and so he eventually in Thor 3 in Ragnarok, he got a much bigger role, and just progressed over time. If he were to be cast now, he would have been cast as a much bigger role. So that as all things being considered. But he was not doing his job. He didn't do what Frigga asked him to do. Frigga, I think I said Frigo, but Frigga, Frigga, however you say it. He didn't do what she asked him to do. He didn't keep an eye on Thor. Thor went to Midgard, to Earth, and he just didn't watch him. Didn't pay attention, because later on we see, of course, Jane had to call Selvig and apparently get, I don't know, loudspeakers or something loud enough to call Heimdall's name and get his attention, which was interesting in itself. Of course, I guess cartoon logic applies because it's animated, I guess, even though it's supposed to apply to the greater MCU in some degree. I guess we'll see how that works out at the end of the season, which is very, very close. There's only 2 more episodes to go. It's hard to believe that we've been in this 7 weeks. So obviously Jane and Thor meet a different way, and Darcy ends up with Howard the Duck, which is hilarious. And then they get married by an Elvis that may or may not be a Skrull in disguise. As far as excuse me, I gotta get some water, because man, it's late and my throat is scratchy. Excuse me. All right. Let's see. All right, so Thor throws a huge party, and he's got a pretty impressive list of party guests. Starts calling people intergalactic, as it says in the description. Starts calling people from all over. Or word gets out, kind of, how things do. Even Nick Fury referencing Sean Penn's character from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Just like a high school party thing, word gets out and everybody shows up, just like in the movies. So we've got Skrulls, we've got Ravagers, we've got residents of Sakaar. Of course, the Warriors 3, Lady Sif, Rocket was in the sink when they woke up the next morning, which was kind of like the Hangover. And it's funny because Rocket is voiced by Bradley Cooper, the star of the Hangover. We got Yondu, Howard the Duck, obviously, possibly even Taika Waititi. There was a man that showed up several times wearing a pineapple shirt, which could be in reference to Taika's pineapple romper that he wore to Comic-Con a couple years back. We see Scourge show up, the executioner from Ragnarok, and that was another little, I guess, meant to be a reference, but he gave him the beer that never empties, and which was a reference from Doctor Strange, which came even after Thor 2 into Ragnarok. Is just, yeah. So things are just kind of out of whack in the timeline as far as like this universe. Things are just different. Apparently, he is fully aware who Doctor Strange is and has met him, and or maybe Doctor Strange just showed up at the party and gave him the bottomless beer. We've got the Grandmaster, of course. The Grandmaster would be there. He's always down for a party, and of course his assistant Topaz with the melty stick. We've got Nebula. It's not the same Nebula that we saw before. She has obviously been modified by Thanos, just like the one we know from the MCU. We've got Korg and Meep. Obviously, this Korg is fully Korg. He has not had his arm removed by the Collector to punch somebody out. And of course, Meep is still alive. Not to mention when Fury shows up to be another party pooper, Korg runs by him and knocks the mess out of him, and trying to do a ball cannon into one of the pools at the hotel. And of course that makes Maria Hill, acting director of Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., director of Fury. And also to mention, pretty much everybody came back again for this episode. Of course, there were some people that didn't come back. Of course, Dave Bautista didn't voice Drax. There was another one I hadn't mentioned yet. There was some drama about that online, about how the producers saying they reached out to him multiple times, yet he said that he never got the call. Excuse me. Of course, I wonder if Taika Waititi voiced Korg. Unfortunately, I didn't take a photo of the voices at the end like I usually do. But I do know, of course, Drax didn't voice himself. Also, Brie Larson didn't voice Captain Marvel, which is interesting because she's obviously coming back for Captain Marvel. If she did, and I'm mistaken, just let me know in the comments. Let's see. We've got Valkyrie. We've got Aisha and the Sovereigns, the Golden People from Guardians 2. They showed up, which is interesting since that's another thing. Like they are very high and mighty, so I don't know that they would show up for something like that on Earth. So, but of course, this is cartoon logic and just not meant to read into it that much. We've got Loki, of course, Frost Giant Loki, his brother from another mother. Then Surtur, who is alive for, he's alive because he's alive at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok. So Surtur, and then there's also Mantis, and pretty impressive list of party guests. Even I think it's Heavy Spoilers on YouTube mentioned that the Elvis character who married Howard the Duck and Darcy looks like Kurt Russell, and he said he was convinced that that is Ego the Living Planet as Elvis, which is a fun idea. I'm down with it. In this episode, who knows? Anything goes in this episode. Nothing is meant to make sense. Nothing is consistent. Nothing is, yeah. Anyways, so of course Captain Marvel shows up. You know, another weird thing is that Jane is fully aware of who S.H.I.E.L.D. is at this point. She has had another, I guess because there was an instance where Thor was at, it was more of media really, and that he blew up, and Darcy took note and called S.H.I.E.L.D. on him then. So in this timeline, Darcy already knows who S.H.I.E.L.D. is, even though in Thor 1, she had no clue who S.H.I.E.L.D. was when they showed up to take her stuff, and with Coulson and all them. Of course, she knows who S.H.I.E.L.D. is. Maria Hill shows up on her doorstep or her hotel doorstep, after having called and trying to get through. And so, of course, Frank Grillo is playing, I can't remember the guy's name, ended up being Crossbones, who was technically a Hydra agent that's embedded still, and trying to get them to blow up use the nuclear bombs later on in the episode. So they end up calling Captain Marvel as a last resort, who shows up and kicks Thor's ass all over the place, and it's probably one of the best fight sequences in the entire series, and it was really fun and really cool, and really get to see how powerful Captain Marvel really is, because we know Thor is pretty badass. Like, he is super powerful. I mean, he's a lesser god, or whatever. Anyways, yeah, and so much so that Captain Marvel can't even release her entire power, otherwise she could destroy the planet. That's insane. Of course, there's rumored, as far as I understand, there is a power level chart that Kevin Feige keeps, so that when one character shows up in another character's movie, that their power level is consistent. That they don't walk into this movie and they're able to lift 6 tons, and then they walk into this movie and for whatever reason, oh no, I can't lift these 2 tons. As we see in a couple of the Superman, or not a couple, but in like the Brandon Routh Superman movie, where he is stabbed by kryptonite and can't do anything, but suddenly gets the strength to, lift this huge. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. He lift this huge thing up until he gets in the sun, and then absorbs the sun power. Anyways, inconsistent power structures is what I'm getting at. The MCU has gone to certain lengths to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see Captain Marvel and Thor go at it. Of course, she calls him, White Snake. Yeah, she calls him White Snake, which is another 80s reference, which is pretty cool, and it's a nice little throwback to Tony calling him Point Break, and Lebowski, and all that kind of stuff. Keeping on with that tradition. During that fight, he takes Mjolnir, Meow Meow, according to Darcy, and sets it on her chest and holds her down, much like he does with Loki in the MCU. But the only thing about that is the only reason no one is able to lift Mjolnir is because of the spell that Odin put on it when he banished Thor in the first movie. So much Thor himself can't even lift it unless he's worthy. However, we see in the beginning of the movie, he's able to lift. He's absolutely able to lift it, and he is completely unworthy. So at this point, there is no spell. So there's no reason why she wouldn't be able to lift that off of her, and why it would hold her down. So another plot hole. Lots of plot holes in this one. So I also mentioned, excuse me, also mentioned that Heimdall wasn't watching, and of course Jane had to go get Heimdall's attention, which in turn got Frigga's attention, and then he of course had to put everything back, and being kid from I say from St. Louis. I was born in St. Louis. Half my family lives in St. Louis. So it was really nice to see the Arch get a mention and an appearance on screen there. Shout out. So, also, Heimdall wasn't watching. The Watcher wasn't really watching. And we've seen the Watcher, as time progressed, become more and more defined and less a specter in the stars. More and more a person, and more features, and we can see his outfit fully in this one. And so he's getting more and more closer. He's getting closer and closer to the action and to what's going on in the story, and leading towards the Guardians of the Multiverse that we have seen in some of the promos online, leaks or whatever. So in this one, I don't recall ever seeing him blink before, but in this one, of course, his eyes are glowing, and then he blinks, and it just for a moment just shows that he doesn't see every single moment. And even so much so that when the portal opens up at the very end, and Ultravision with his Ultron bots come through the portal, it takes the Watcher off guard, and he is about to declare that, everyone lived happily ever after, and then gets a wait, what? And so he's completely surprised by that, even though he is watching Earth in all these various timelines. So he is actually watching the multiverse and observing the multiverse. And leading us and guiding us through it, and explaining the pros and cons and the ups and downs of all that. So, with that, looking forward to what is happening next. In these next episodes coming out, there are some leaks out online, and for the most part, they've been pretty correct, saying which episodes are coming. And I try not to look at that kind of stuff, except typically when you're doing a show, you kind of give a teaser for next episode, and What If has been inconsistent with that. So much so, like at the beginning, they didn't really announce anything until like the day before or the day of about what the what if would be. But here with Thor, in this past week or two, there's been a significant amount of teasers moving forward up to it, especially if you follow them on Twitter. But of course, no like official teasers. Well, yeah, on Twitter there's like semi-teasers. But as far as like at like a tag at the end of the episode or anything like that, there hasn't been. So according to these online leaks, and from what we're seeing in the promo material and even in the posters and stuff like that, we've got 2 more episodes. And we're going to get the Guardians of the Multiverse. If they lead up to putting the Guardians of the Multiverse together and they don't actually get to fight, that's going to be pretty disappointing. So reportedly, well, not reportedly, but There was supposed to be 10 episodes in this season. However, for whatever reason, whether it be COVID or just deadlines, they were not able to, or just not necessarily making sense thematically or in plot or whatever, story-wise, they decided to nix episode 10 and add it onto season 2. So we're only getting 9 episodes this season, and leading up to the Guardians of the Multiverse, whether that's going to be the teaser when he puts them together and that's, you know, hang on for season 2, or what. But in episode 8, it looks like we're going to get that version of Gamora that we see in the poster where she is in Thanos' armor. And of course with Thanos' helicopter blade weapon. As far as like in the mid-season teaser, there were a couple things that we haven't seen. Like for instance, Party Thor, which is the Thor from this episode, saying zombies cool. And that was my best Thor impression. Sorry. So the zombies are going to come back into play. And of course, Ultra Vision is going to come into play. And we haven't seen the look like super badass version of Black Widow, where she is in like all this tactical gear and on this motorcycle. Even though we've seen her do some badass things on a motorcycle in Age of Ultron. It looks like, so in the comics, the zombies were, I think Uatu, the Watcher, called them the #1 threat to the multiverse. One of the ways that they decided to fight the zombies was to have these Ultron bots come out, just like in Age of Ultron. He had all those Ultron bots. They had those fight the zombies. However, they weren't ready because the Ultron bots and the zombies decided to band together and work together and take over. So it's interesting to see whether or not that's going to happen, or if they're just going to pit them against each other, or what is happening with that, because the zombie horde is pretty unstoppable, although they're not as powerful as the ones in the comics, because the ones in the comics retained their brain functions, and they, of course, in this one they can still do their powers and stuff, but they don't speak. And in the other one they were fully aware and they spoke, and the more they ate, the more they retained their brain function and things like that. So in this one, of course, we see them using their powers and all that stuff, but it looks like this Ultron, in his universe, obviously is not from the Thor universe that we just saw, but in this one, he has gotten the Infinity Stones, and he has also gotten the synthetic vibranium body that they ended up putting the Mind Stone in, that used Jarvis's programming to create Vision. But of course, in Age of Ultron, he almost was able to do that. So in this universe, he was able to, obviously, and then he was able to go on and get the Infinity Stones. Being at that time, Thanos already had 1 or 2 of them, I think. That's an interesting thing to play out, to see how he got all those. I would really want to see how he got all those, and maybe he is the one from Gamora, this Gamora's universe, and that is why she's wearing Thanos' armor, is because this Ultra Vision has killed Thanos and taken all the stones, and Gamora is fighting him and maybe potentially following him through the multiverse. Because if if having all the stones and allows him to travel through the multiverse, because he's got the Infinity Gauntlet basically built into his chest and everything, with all this armor and everything on top of his synthetic vibranium body, which is crazy. Why do you need armor on top of that? So if having all the Infinity Stones allows him to travel through the multiverse, then zombie Thanos, who also is about to have all the Infinity Stones, could potentially travel through the multiverse as well. And that's that's a recipe for disaster. So I'm pretty excited to see how all this is going to play out. Obviously, all the things they set up in the first half are coming back around in the second half. So that's pretty exciting to see that they make sense, and and how all this is going to play out in the greater actual MCU, because they're supposed to have greater implications. Another thing that I didn't mention in the MCU news is that, yes, they must fight. One thing that I didn't mention in the MCU news is that there is a rumor going around that we will see Doctor Strange in Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness. There's a lot of characters. Benedict Cumberbatch is in Spider-Man No Way From Home, but is gone out and said that Multiverse of Madness will be more epic than Spider-Man Far From Home, which is saying a lot. So we know that Wanda is going to be in that. We know that, of course, Vision's going to be in, or not Vision, maybe Vision, I don't know. We don't know where White Vision is or what all that is, what's going on with that. Potentially, I mean, if she's chasing her children, I mean, why wouldn't Vision show back up? But of course, we're getting Doctor Strange and Wong and all that. Probably Spider-Man. There are rumors that Loki is going to be in it as well, because the whole multiverse aspect, and who better to show up and explain what's happening and what happened than Loki? Like the Loki from the series, not obviously the other Loki. But we also know that America Chavez, one of the Young Avengers, another Young Avenger that they're building towards the Young Avengers movie, is also going to be in Doctor Strange. That one is confirmed. She has the power to travel through the multiverse. She creates these portals. So that will be obviously pretty useful to them. But the rumor is that there is a scene where her and our Doctor Strange are passing through these portals, running away from dark Doctor Strange from the What If series. So that would be pretty crazy to see all those things put together, and something that not necessarily confirms it, but does make it a possibility, make it interesting, is that Benedict Cumberbatch, in one of his social media posts, was talking about how crazy the movie was going to be that they were filming and all this stuff, and would not show his face on the camera, but was like showing the wall, making a video. Was he not showing his face because he was in makeup for Doctor Strange? We don't know. I mean, very possibly. The multiverse opens up all kinds of possibilities, and hopefully is moving towards the Secret Wars, which we can pretty much surmise that is happening because the Russo brothers, who did Infinity War, did Endgame. They also did Cap Civil War and Captain America Winter Soldier. So they did those 4 big movies, and they decided they were going to take a break from the MCU, and said that pretty much the only reason they would come back to the MCU is to do Secret Wars. And so it looks like they were on their way back to the MCU because they were in negotiations to do another Marvel Studios movie when all this Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow nonsense started happening with Disney screwing around with them, and Kevin Feige got pissed about it, and the Russo brothers, who were in negotiations, backed out of negotiations. So Disney could potentially be spoiling the Marvel Studios universe, because nobody was supposed to know that the Russo brothers were in talks for another movie. And they went on record saying that the only movie they'd come back for is Secret Wars. So, I mean, that kind of confirms, like, indirectly that that's what's going to happen and where we're moving towards. So with the multiverse, like I said, anything is possible. Anything, all this crazy stuff, they can get nuts with it, and it makes sense narratively. They can just say, I mean, think about it. The Spider-Man No Way Home, we've got Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, and Alfred Molina, Doc Ock showing back up, and Electro. It's like, but it's not the same Electro. It's a different Electro, because this Electro uses yellow lightning and that Electro uses blue lightning. So they're like different multiverse versions of themselves. So it all makes sense narratively because the multiverse. It's this weird plot thing where you can do anything you want and just call it the multiverse. And it's even though it seems like a cop-out, it's super fun anyways. So it's not one of those where it's like Deus Ex Machina, where it's like, blah, and it just feels cheap. This is actually fun. And it takes years and years to set up, and all the puzzle pieces and the web being interconnected. It's crazy and it's fun, and I'm here for it. So that is all I got. Oh, I'm sorry. So episode 8, the rumor, coming back around, the rumor is that we are going to get either Gamora versus Tony or Tony and Sakaar, which I don't know. It looks like we're definitely probably going to get the Gamora. So my theory is that is the Gamora from this Vision, this Ultra Vision's timeline, and that's why she's wearing Thanos' armor, is because she is trying to track down and stop this Ultra Vision. But no proof on that. That remains to be seen. That is all I got. If you have anything else or anything else you'd like to talk about, hit me up in the comments below, whether you're on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. I forgot what other one that was there for a split second. So once again, thanks for joining me tonight. I thank you, and I hope that you will join me live, Quinn and I both, every Thursday night to talk about MCU stuff, and especially right now, every episode of What If. Join us live every Thursday night, Thursday at 9:30-ish, and Central Standard Time. So please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon so that you know when we drop new videos and when we go live. And if you are into The Walking Dead and horror and zombies and all that kind of stuff, hit us up on Sunday nights at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time to talk about each episode of The Walking Dead. Because it is the final episode. It is getting crazy, and they could go anywhere with it. So just like the MCU right now, it's kind of fun. It's kind of crazy. Also, don't forget to check out the website at www.broken.pictures.com, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Peace.